I wanted to make this video about how I managed to lose 8.5 pounds in just 6 days. I did it painlessly and I was enjoying the things that I was eating, no killing myself with salads. I think that in and of itself is a unique experience that I just had to share it. And your body is a fat burning machine. It actually can do incredible things if you just give it the tools to do so and you don't get in its way. So this is actually going to be a 2-part series. The second video, I will detail the exact numbers, my weigh-in numbers, and exactly the foods that I ate. But I actually think that this video is even more important because it explains the bigger concepts that I was thinking about when I made those food choices. So it talks about things like metabolic health, gut health, inflammation, and the effects of ultra-processed foods so that you yourself can think about those things when you're trying to make food choices. So I'm all about promoting independence in my clients. I want to teach you through education how to think about food and your body in a different way so that you can begin to trust yourself and you can logically come to better conclusions about which food choices to make. So first off, I wanted to be really clear that it wasn't the number that upset me on the scale. It was not the number, and it wasn't even how I looked. I thought that I still looked great. It was how I felt every day when I was waking up in the morning. I was feeling horrible when I was eating poorly. I woke up feeling overheated, feeling nauseous, honestly exactly like a hangover. And I also noticed a change in my mood where I was a little bit more down on myself. So whenever I resume my normal weight and whenever my body resumes its metabolic health, I noticed that all those things fall into place and I feel a lot better. So I was really after the feeling of feeling well. That's why I went ahead and lost the weight naturally and being really conscious of my choices and making sure that this was all done in a safe way. So my brother came into town and I only see him once or twice a year. I absolutely adore him, and we went out to eat at some restaurants that I don't normally eat at, and I was eating more carbs than I usually eat and poor quality carbs. So I think this is a common issue with the standard American diet, is that people eat carbs in excess and they're poor quality carbs. And so that is definitely something that helped my weight go up. I don't usually like to talk about macros because I think it oversimplifies food and diet's really much more complex than that. But roughly speaking, in order to maintain a lower weight, and again, a low weight does not mean that you're healthy. So, but there are 2 ways that you can kind of maintain a lower weight, is if you have high protein, high fat, and low carbs, or high protein, high carbs, and low fat. As soon as those fat and carb ratios start to equal each other, that's whenever your weight is going to go ahead and increase. So I naturally follow a pretty high fat diet. So as soon as I increased that carb content, and they were really poor quality carbs at that, that's whenever my weight went up. And again, I didn't freak out, but I did notice that I was feeling really unwell. And so I wanted to change that feeling. So first things first, what is metabolic health? So I think about metabolic health as I think about my body as having a ton of workers inside of it. And I really trust that the body knows what to do with itself. Our job is to provide those workers with the raw materials that they need, which is in the form of vitamins and minerals, and to make sure that we're not getting in their way. So not eating foods that are going to go ahead and promote inflammation or disturb whatever the workers want to do naturally. And another thing is that every food that we put in our mouth is contributing to our gut. So our gut is kind of composed of 2 beings. There's the good guys and the bad guys. Everything that you eat is either feeding the good guys or feeding the bad guys. And the bad guys can disrupt all kinds of processes in your gut. And not only that, they can actually steal the vitamins that you eat from your diet if they're in big enough population. So that's why you especially want to keep the bad guys under control, because you can still be eating the right thing, but if your gut is completely imbalanced, they can actually steal your nutrients. Another thing that I talk about in the next video is inflammation. And inflammation directly translates to ignite or to burn. And I think that's really significant because whenever your body has like some kind of harmful stimulus and it triggers that inflammation response, it's kind of like your body is starting a fire. And fires, they burn both good in their path. Inflammation also does this, but if it catches up to the root cause fairly quickly, whatever good is lost in that process of the fire, it will have been worth it. The issue with inflammation is whenever it's ongoing, it can't catch up to that root cause, and it goes on for too long, causing chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, that is especially harmful. And so I just recently read a paper about inflammation, and it was talking about all these medications that go ahead and reduce inflammation. It was talking about those harmful side effects. And ultimately, it was saying the best way that we can handle inflammation is focusing on that root cause, because if inflammation handles that root cause, it will resolve itself, or to take a preventative measure. And I think that the animal-based diet is the best diet for reducing and preventing inflammation. And so that is the diet that's made my husband and I feel the best. And my husband has an extensive history in trying diets. He is an ex-jiu-jitsu fighter, and so he had to be doing these big weight cuts in short periods of time. So we've worked with a lot of really famous nutritionists and dietitians that are really big in the fighting community, in the jiu-jitsu community, in the UFC community. Tried a lot of different things, and ultimately what made us feel the best was doing our own research and coming across the animal-based diet. So that's largely what I base my diet off of. And if you know anything about the animal-based diet, you know that the only carbs that they have are fruits and honey. And so whenever I was having these excess carbs and just being really careless with them, because usually I'm really intentional with my carbs, that's whenever my weight went ahead and shot up. So there are a lot of foods that can be the very first step to a downwards inflammatory pathway. And ultra-processed foods and seed oils play a big role in this. And I remember one of the first experiments that I ever heard about that kind of opened my eyes to the harms of ultra-processed foods. And I had read a book called Fighting the Food Giants. And I had noticed that this book was being referenced in so many scientific papers and books that I was reading. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've just got to read it for myself. And the author of this book, he worked for Quaker Oats, and he kind of exposed all the things behind big food corporations. And in his time there, he came across a research paper that Quaker published where they had an experiment where they had 4 groups of rats, and they were feeding them all different diets and saw how long that they lived. And the group of rats that died the quickest was the one that was fed a diet of water, simple vitamins, and puffed wheat. And so he went ahead and he went to the head of the company, the president, and he said, hey, it looks like puffed wheat is actually harmful for these animals. Why is it in so many of our products? And he said, well, it's because it's made me $9 million. So that's kind of shows the attitude of the big food corporations. That's why you really have to be looking out for yourself in these and make sure that you're making the right food choices for you. This guy actually went ahead and redid this experiment multiple times and got the same result, but he simplified it. He had only 2 groups. One group of rats that was starving, fed nothing, and the other one that was fed just puffed wheat, and the puffed wheat actually died faster than the rats that were starving. So what does that tell us? Well, the process of processing, when foods are being ultra processed, it involves really aggressive things like high heat and high pressurization. And every protein, every molecule has a happy place. They have a temperature and pressure and pH that they like to be at. And whenever you disrupt that, that can actually change the shape of the molecule. And the first thing that you learn in biology is that shape equals function. So once the shape is changed, that molecule will lose its function. So in this high heat and high pressurization environment, the shape of the molecules was actually changing to make a toxin. So then whenever they were ingesting this puffed wheat, it actually was actively doing harm. A lot of the issue with ultra-processed foods is that they're stripping the food of nutrients and vitamins. So then the food it's dead. It no longer has life in it. And without life, it's actually completely unappetizing. It looks gross. It smells gross. The texture is weird. And that's why food additives exist, is to try to make it more appetizing and appealing to the eyes and the senses. But our body knows the truth. Whenever that food gets into our stomach, it cannot engage with the life that we are, and so it offers us nothing. But this experiment shows that not only does it offer us nothing, but it can actually actively cause harm. That's why that's significant. Another thing that helps me make better food choices is that I think of my body as an other. I think about my body as like my best friend, because I think a lot of people can relate to this, and that it's a lot easier for me and many people to be selfless before it is for us to be selfish. So it's a lot easier for us to take care of our partners, our kids, our family, our friends, and then we kind of put ourselves on the back burner. So whenever I think about my body as my best friend, it helps me really prioritize what I'm eating, and it kind of makes me take pause whenever I'm having any kind of feelings or symptoms or feeling unwell. And I make sure that I analyze, hey, have I been giving my body absolutely everything that it needs in order for it to be giving me what I want? Because it's really bold of us to ask that our body performs well athletically, has us get good sleep, reduced anxiety. We ask a lot of our bodies, and if you have the audacity to ask that, you better be prepared to give your body the resources that it needs, and you have to be prepared to avoid the things that are going to actively agitate your body. The more I learn about the body at a really granular level, the more I realize how brilliant the body is, and a lot of its complexity is deliberate, and a lot of the complexity exists because it's trying to make sure that it can easily adapt to any changes in the environment. The human biology is very adaptable. That's what's allowed us to exist for as long as we have as a species. And so you have to think your body is always trying to get information about the environment to see how it can best change for you and how it can best work for you. So environmental stimulus can be things like mood, but the most important environmental stimulus is the food that you're putting in your mouth. That's some direct contact that your body has with what's going on outside. So your body is, again, always trying to change to be the best that it can for you, and trying to get information on your environment to see what it needs to do to be a team player. And the food that you eat, if you're giving it poor quality food, then your body is getting the wrong message about the environment around you. You need to make sure that you're giving your body amazing quality foods that it can perform at its absolute best, and that it has a good sense of the environment that it's around, because it will change in response to what type of signals it's getting about the environment that it's in. So there's a really cool experiment that proves exactly that point. There were these farmers that they started to feed their pigs a feed that did not have vitamin A in it. And the babies that were born, the little piglets, they were born without eyes. Why were they born without eyes? Because in order for animals to make vitamin A, they need a precursor vitamin that comes only in plants. And so whenever the parent pigs weren't having any vitamin A, what the fetus understood was, oh, there must not be plants in this environment. Therefore, there must not be sunlight. And if there's no sunlight, there's no need for me to have eyes. So that just goes to show how easily the body can turn on and off certain genes. And it goes to show how important it is the foods that we eat, because it's giving our body information about the environment. So if we want to perform well and we want our body to do things for us, we need to make sure that we're giving it accurate information about our living conditions in the world around us, because our body is always trying its best for us. So if it gives us a response that we don't like, it's probably because we are giving it information that it thinks is harmful. So thank you so much for watching this video. Go ahead and meet me in the second video where I break down my weights that I had every single day, and you'll see exactly the rate at which I was losing weight, and then you'll also know everything that I was eating. But this video is so important to understand the why that I made those food choices. Thank you so much for watching. You can find more information on me on my website, IAteRealFood.org. That's where you can book appointments with me. You can even book a 20-minute fridge appointment with me where I look in your fridge and tell you if you're on the right track or if you need a little bit of help. Thanks so much.